welcome to this experts panel, where we're going to discuss the question, should LSPs diversify their services to better scale their business? This panel is brought to you by Wordbee, and it's going to be hosted by my colleague Robert Rogi and myself, Tanya Falkner. And in the next hour, we want to dive deep into this topic. Some people, some say you have to diversify your portfolio of services, whilst others are strictly against it. So we're excited to hear what our panelists think about this. For our listeners, if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll try to answer them towards the end of the panel.
Cool. So we're super excited to welcome the four of you here with us today. Why don't you take a moment to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit too about like whether or not you've diversified the services in your business, and if so, how or why? And why don't we start with Ilya?
Oh, because I'm in the top left corner, right?
Because you're on the top left.
Okay.
You're also on the top of the list, so you're both.
All right. And the brief introduction, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you can see from the screen, my name is Ilya Mishchenko. I am the managing director at Litera in St. Petersburg, Russia. I've been in the industry for about, let's say, 20 years, 11 of which I've been at various management positions, mid-level, senior level management positions, doing anything from production to sales. And I also do some public work, like with the Translators Union and the International Federation, and also I'm ambassador for LocLunch, just like Diego there. As for diversification, we do diversify. That was one of the main things when I came on board at the present company that I work for, and that was one of the basic goals that the owners wanted the company to grow into, is to diversify the services both vertically and horizontally. Right now, we and there are two things. Obviously, there are a lot of ideas of how and where we can dive into, but the two primary things is that we expanded the number of verticals that we work for. We introduced the company primarily was doing a lot of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, like shipbuilding, a lot of heavy stuff. And we moved into heavier stuff still, started doing a lot of life sciences and a lot of e-commerce. And that was hard, and I'll probably talk a little bit about it later. But the second one was we tried to expand our services because, this is one of the things that I came to realize that in our segment, if you want to stand out, if you want to set yourself apart from the competition, you have to obviously provide something of a better value. Given the resources, the vendor constraints, given the pricing constraints that we have right now, and we work predominantly on the Russian market, we're not seeing any any factors that would make us stand out drastically, right? So we needed to offer something else to provide extra value, and that turned out to be corporate training. We have, it's a whole new thing for us. Well, it has been a whole new thing for us for the last 3 years with the licensing. We started with translator training, turned out to be a very good marketing item for us to promote the company, in terms of that we not only provide translation services to professional buyers of said services, but also can trade them in various domains, technology, process building, whatever. But then realized that it would bring us more money if we do completely different things, but still connected with languages. So now we do a lot of language training. As of this year, it's a separate unit within the company with their own budget, with their own management, and with a separate sales team that will start, I hope, in June. So obviously that was with a bit of calculation and calculating, let's say, opportunity cost. What we would rather invest in this rather than invest in better processes and more qualified vendors in terms of translation localization, but it turned out to be slightly bit more profitable than the translation as such. And then the next step would be diving even deeper and doing things like not only language training, but sales training, assessing employees' competencies and finding out whether they need better training in time management or sales skills or soft skills or whatever that any, let's say, HR consultancy provides. So because obviously when we sell translation, when everybody sells translation, they try to sell it as an expert, more or less, right? And when they do so, and we're trying to do so, but not only focus on the let's say internationalization needs, but also focus on the employees' development of the customers. And it turns out obviously that they have a bigger demand for this than for translation. If they don't have translation or localization requirements right now, they definitely have something for the corporate training. And it's the question of how we qualify this and how we can help them. Maybe we cannot help them, but at least it's something that we also offer, and it actually helps the salespeople to pitch, because that shows that it's a full-scale linguistic support, if you will, because obviously we do more language training than anything else.
Right. So let's go on to Constantine here. And so you're in a bit of a different thing because you're with Nimdzi, and I don't know if Nimdzi itself diversifies services or not. But so why don't you jump in, and then you can probably mention or reply a little bit to Ilya too.
Right. So my job is to do the research. So while Ilya and the others diversify, I watch them, and I try to see if their efforts were successful or not. Record that, get some analysis insights. So when the next person wants to diversify, they can learn from the mistakes of others instead of going all the way and go by trial and error. That's essentially it, according to what I do. Nimdzi, of course, as a research company, is very diverse in what we offer. There's consultancy, there's training, there's M&A brokerage. We now have a government contract in the United States. So it's very, very diverse. Wherever there is the opportunity, our leadership jumps in. They're very, very entrepreneurial. As for the companies, I have a few pointers how to diversify. Like Ilya started, the translation business doesn't excite people anymore that much. You say translation, you don't see the fire in the eyes, you don't see a wow effect. Okay, translation business, okay, interpreting business. So when you try to impress a new person, it's always interesting to have something else in the sleeve so that you can start a conversation. Let's say a company does medical translations. It's a very interesting, big and growing sector, but it's difficult to get into it and sell. So instead of offering medical translations, they can come in and say, we offer regulatory affairs. We can help you pass the drug in 10 countries. We can help you get approval, get medical documentation, get labeling on the package, that kind of thing. Not all of the services might be very profitable or might have a big volume for the customer, but they give the customer, pharmaceutical company, an idea that this partner is going to help them make more money because they can help them go into another market through these approvals. So this service is strategic, right? Diversifying something which helps sell translation is a very good idea. There are many services that emerge right now. Maybe 10 years ago, did anyone hear about e-discovery or data cleaning? Probably no one, right? or maybe there were just a few people. These days, there are tens of millions in these services. So unless you're very entrepreneurial, keep your hand on the pulse and you look what the others are doing, you can miss this emerging segment. You can miss the opportunity. So I think it's a very interesting time when we live in, and we have the opportunity to see how digital services emerge, how AI services emerge. It's a big change to the economy, and for the entrepreneurs, it's pretty good. They can always, small companies can always invent something which challenges the bigger companies, and the bigger companies can always monitor what's going on to keep the status quo.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely gonna talk more about that. But let's finish our introductions. Maybe Andre, you want to go next?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I'm Andre Hemker, as it says down there. I'm the CEO and owner of WordCraft. We are a language service company here in Germany, in Leipzig, Germany. We also do language training, we do translation, we do terminology management, we do text analysis, we do a lot of audio-visual translation. And how this came about is pretty much how I started the company. I did all sorts of different things, worked in audio post-production a long time, studied to be a translator. We acquired a language school a while ago that has been in business for over 20 years. And the thing is, this diversification as a means of growth is one thing. However, I have a bit of a different take on that. Coming from my father, who comes from the not translation business, the construction business, and he always told me that turnkey construction is the big thing. And you know, he said that 30 years ago, and he was right. That's how it works. Somebody wants to buy a car factory. They don't want to buy a robot, a door handle, a floorboard, and a window. They want to buy a car factory. So we approach it from the angle: what is needed to produce a certain product? What is a product that is needed? What do the clients want? And what do we need to be able to do in order to deliver this product? Does it make sense to have these skills in-house? Does it make sense to buy these skills? Do we understand enough about the product if we buy the skill externally? Are we able to make sure that the quality is right if we do that? So this is how we see diversification. It's more about what do we want to achieve, rather than like, oh, I'm interested in knitting now. Oh, I want to learn how to knit. There has to be a product behind it, and especially in the language field, I disagree that people don't feel fire about translation. It's actually our clients do, especially if we show them new ways to doing things. When we I don't know, when we automate website translation, that their editors can now just push a button and everything goes automatically from there. And you'd be surprised how low tech a lot of stuff still is. So there is so much to do there. However, the main thing is our clients they want to sell a product overseas. That is pretty much what it comes down to. They need the people to do it. They need the know-how to do it. They need the technologies to do it, and they need the support to do it. This is why language training has a lot to do with translation, because, well, you can have your stuff translated, but if people can't speak the lingo or can't speak proper English, well, you have a problem there. You can use things on both sides. For instance, we often start with terminology management for clients, which we then use as a vocab. We then now determine the brand language of the client that is going to serve as the vocab list in the language training field, and our trainers make sure that this vocabulary is then be known by the staff, but also the same terminology, vocab list, or whatever you want to call it, then also serves as the brand language in the translation field. We do a lot of audiovisual stuff, and we integrated all post-production processes into translation management, where we can actually do the same thing and use terminology management on voiceovers, subtitles anyway, and even graphic design and motion graphics and stuff like that. And where you really just want to create a bubble for the client where he gets everything that is needed to do a certain task, to do a certain thing, to get this from a single source, a single management source, a single point of management where everybody can work together, and everything that is produced uses the same data sets. And yeah, that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Hiring is a big thing, you know. If you still, I mean, for instance, when people apply, and this goes out to everybody who might see this, you know, if you apply as a translator or a proofreader or something, and you don't show me that you have other hobbies and can do other things next to it, then tough luck. Because you need people, you know, that can actually do more than one thing and apply different knowledge. Robert and I talked about this today, about the new training. I guess it's okay to bring this up here, Robert, because it's a diversification thing.
If you keep it brief, because Diego still got to introduce himself here.
It's like e-learning about WordBee. So I said, okay, we do audiovisual. We know how to produce video. We do training. We know how to do that and how to prepare lectures and all that. And we know how to translate. So we created a multilingual e-learning program from that. And that to me is diversification of skills rather than services. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess Diego.
It's my turn now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Diego. I'm the CEO and founder of Creative Words. We are a localization company based in Italy, which I founded a couple of years ago. I'm saying this because when I started the company, I was coming from another company, and when I left, I had to sign an NDA, so I was forced to diversify, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to have my own company. So basically, at the beginning, I was promoting my company as a communication agency. And my intention was to offer different services, including transcreation, including content creation, copywriting. But then the very first big project I got was a huge machine translation post-editing project. And so this is what I'm specialized in now, just by chance. And now we are doing a lot of different services in reaction of different customer requests. I'm doing a lot of content creation, of course, for different reasons. We have done a huge project on content creation for training speech-to-text systems, for instance. We're doing a lot of copywriting for different industries. We're doing a lot of content enrichment, if this expression exists in English, a lot of data collection. For instance, we are working on a huge photo collection project now, and the aim is to train an OCR system. So it's linked to the language, but not very directly linked to translation. We do multilingual social media management also, because this is what I was offering at the beginning. And my customers at the beginning were mainly small Italian companies, which needed to outsource the social media management. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of brand name evaluation and analysis. We do data cleaning. I very much believe in e-learning also. We're not really specialized in audio-visual, but we are about to launch an e-learning platform for translators. So I really believe in diversification. And even if I started as a reaction to my customer needs, now I made it a sort of way of living the company. And I still believe translation has a wow effect for me. I love translation, but I also love to offer different services. So I'm totally in favor of diversifying the services.
Cool. Well, thanks for the introductions, everyone.
So we've got lots of fertile ground here to go on. All right. So like, I guess my first question would be, can you? I mean, so like basically like you're getting customer requests for this, you're getting customer requests for that, and can you not diversify? You know, like is it possible to not diversify? Is it almost like you have to?
For me, the answer would be no, you cannot not diversify. I mean, I would have lost a millions opportunities if I didn't diversify my services. And I would have probably lost also translation clients if I was not able to support them with different services like content creation or data collection or whatever. Depends on what your customers are, but maybe you get a customer for translation and you get the social media management part, or vice versa. But if you can do both, then probably you are likely to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't stand on one leg. You have to, there's ups and downs, and if your business is a little more granular and you can do different things, then for instance, I guess Ilya will know that Christmas and summertime is really bad for language training. It's really, really bad. You make a lot less turnover than you normally do. So it's really good if you have other projects to counter that a little bit. Ilya, right? I mean, Christmas sucks.
Oh, summer sucks. Well, now sucks. But
so I believe you would outsource these services, or do you have people in house? How do you manage to keep them busy during the summer?
well, first, that was one of the things that we thought about, because we had several paths, right? We even thought about what Kostya said before about the regulatory services, which is like the medicinal registration. Huge money, also huge investment, but like the money that we wouldn't make, I don't know, in 5 years, one project only. But a lot of investment, you have to wait a lot, you have to, it's so much prep work, so that we said we don't know anything about it. We either need to bring a whole lot of new people, so let's do something that we know about, which turned out to be language training, because we have some people in-house that used to work. I used to train people English when I was a student at university, so at least I know the gist of it, more or less. And then we try to apply all the stuff that we keep in-house. It's management, project management, vendor management, and basic management, right? Like there's the academic director that we hired 2 months ago. So we can find things for them to be busy about, especially because a lot of contracts that we are working towards are usually given to us through bids. And for larger corp, obviously we can work with smaller companies, we can work with, and obviously we work with our translation customers. Like if they have translation, meaning they have international projects, meaning they have people that need to be speaking English or any other foreign language, Chinese, Spanish, whatever. So there is obviously a need for this. But we also want to target companies that will never buy translation from us, but we can sell them training services. And this is a continuous process that has to go throughout the year, regardless of the season. Because if they want to start in September, they will need to get the bid out, the RFPs in May, do the bidding process in June, then sign the contract. And at large corporations, it takes ages to sign something like this. So, I mean, Summer might be a low season, but then if it's a large contract, like we have a company in a different city, we almost like surprisingly never sell in St. Petersburg. We sell elsewhere in Russia, and they have like, I don't know, 6 or 8 groups of people that, you know, they do different levels of foreign languages, and they study throughout the year. It doesn't matter. Like we specifically don't target B2C segment. We only do B2B, and they can make their people, you know, study on Christmas Day. Well, not really on Christmas Day, but you know, they can make them do these things. So it's not as hard. But then again, there are a lot of other things to do for the people that we actually hire to move this forward.
It's important to understand that language training is pretty much based on freelancers. So language trainers work as freelancers. The German law pretty much forces us to work that way, because if you're a foreigner and you're not, you know, you don't have a certain legal status, or you're not married to a German or something, then you cannot actually take on a regular position. However, you are allowed to work freelance, so that gives us a plethora of available freelance translators. I mean, you know, we could always have more, but there are a lot of people that are dependent on that, and of course you have to treat them well, and the pay has to be good. However, it comes with the advantage that cost-wise, of course, freelance, no training, no pay. But you know, Christmas was just, you know, maybe that's a German thing, but you know, in December, like there for 2 weeks in Germany, nobody does anything. Tanya, you know that. You know that everything shuts down. You know, like you know, yeah.
Very true. So, I mean, you all kind of agree that diversification is key. Do you think there's a...
Constantine doesn't. He said.
Well, he doesn't. Okay.
We consider it a good sign when a company divests of its non-core businesses and focuses on one thing. It's easy to lose focus and go wide instead of going deep if you diversify in all kinds of businesses, and specifically if you go wide in your segments, in your verticals. So if you try to diversify, take a little bit here, take a little bit there, and it often results in a few smaller companies around the owner that support him and his family, but it doesn't result in big, great companies that survive the test of time. So instead, when we see that the company is getting rid and closing non-core businesses, it means it wants to go on for its key segment, key vertical, key business, and it sees the opportunity there, and it probably means that the company will grow next year. And if the company abandons its core business, doesn't invest so much in the core segment where they're working, if they start exploring the opportunities around them, that means that the main thing that they do is not as prospective, not as attractive anymore.
This is why you embed it in a product. You have to embed your services in a product. If you do that, you're fine. If you're just diversifying for the sake of diversifying, I absolutely agree with you.
But you were also saying, you mentioned you should be going deep instead of wide, but this is where we're talking about horizontally versus vertically diversification, right? And it doesn't have to be wide, it can also be diversifying vertically.
Yes.
What I was actually gonna...
You don't have to do anything. Not everyone has to build a big, great company with millions of dollars that survives the test of time, just for some people.
Well, I think you need to also to have a look at your market. I mean, I think every market is different. I don't see any opportunity here for language training, for instance, locally. I mean, in general, but in Italy probably. It depends on what you decide, I guess. You need to observe the market, and it's not something you really can decide in advance. Probably in any case, it would need an investment, I guess. Be it time, money, people. I think you need to consider which one is best for you. I don't think you necessarily lose your focus if you diversify in different verticals or with different services. It depends.
I mean, when you go to school, you know, you have different subjects, and you add subjects. It doesn't mean that you don't like mathematics anymore just because you learn a foreign language. So it's more like adding skills. And let's not forget, you can pour money into things. You can hire people. If you don't know what you're talking about, you're gonna burn your fingers.
Hey, it's also a question of communication.
Yeah.
So Ilya, you mentioned that you're operating a totally separate business unit for your language training, right? Doing it that way is going to help you diversify without losing momentum or energy in your other your core services that you offered previously.
That was the thing, because we tried to build on that side of business using the sales force that we have now, obviously, and Foster knows this, that we have quite an extensive sales force in-house, not the largest in Russia, but still one of the larger ones, and people always in, I think about 12 people in sales and account management altogether. And we tried selling the service altogether. Like, you would come in and you would see that there's a potential for translation, localization, you do this, you do audiovisual, and then in hindsight you kind of offer language training. Maybe you have it, or yes you do, let's talk about this. But then we found out that even though it's a kind of a simple service in itself to understand, and you know, it's the biggest problem when you hire salespeople from outside or even from the industry. It's a complex service that we sell, because it's not always translate 200 words from, I don't know, English to Russian. It's do a 2 million words with a bit of transcreation, 5 language combinations, and complex DTP in FrameMaker, and then publish it, print it, and deliver it. You know, it's always very complex, and a lot of aspects to it, and any project is unique. And that is one of the struggles that we have with the sales team, because we need to train and retrain and train them more so that they show that they understand the product better. In terms of training, it's an additional product. It's additional, I don't know, information that they need to learn. It's additional sales techniques that they need to, and they're selling to completely different sets of people within the organization. If it's localization, they're selling to, I don't know, marketing manager or localization manager or in-house translator. If it's language training, they have to sell to HR. And it's different skill set, different approach, everything's different. And then we thought that we'd rather use the sales processes that we adopted the company, how we build a sales funnel, how we manage people, and how we make them pass the client through that sales funnel. What are the control points, you know, and apply all the methodology that we have in terms of sales and client retention, client like account management, and use that, but on a completely different sets of people. That's why we're hiring like a BDM, business development manager, for language training separately, because we found out by experience that yes, we can sell to our customers, our core business customers, and some of them actually buy it. They buy language training, they buy translator training, they buy, one of them bought sales consultancy because they didn't know how to sell properly. But then there are a plethora of companies that don't require translation, but they need, they need the attention. So in order not to lose focus with the core business, we wanted to get this as a separate unit, and it actually helps in terms of what do you call it, because when we approach a customer and say that we are literate translation company, as it says on the materials, as it says on the website, so we need to position ourselves a bit different, because then we're competing with like huge e-learning platforms like Skyeng in Russia. And when they're choosing a Skyeng, whose core business is language training, and they train thousands and thousands of people, and they have literate translation company, then it's it's a bit confusing, even though the salesperson might be perfect on our side, but still. So it's also the question of branding, and maybe calling it a group of companies or whatever, but still it has to be separate. So now it's called Educational Center.
I'd like to mention one aspect, and Ilya will know about that. The one thing with language training, what most translations companies don't realize, especially we also only do B2B, and we train a lot of management staff and company owners and stuff like that. Very often you get a free 90-minute sales pitch over and over and over again, and you're very good trainers, they create trust, and you often find that this trust base makes them come to you for everything language, and you generate quite a few translation sales out of that. Some of our best translation clients have developed from language training, and that's another thing of diversification, is that if a client is happy with one product you do, and the other product is related, and it's not like we're selling Coke and automobiles, then this trust can be very, very helpful in order to sell the other service or CMS integrate. We got one client where we started with training, and now we're doing CMS integration and all that, and we just sort of creeped in from the moment when we actually started developing a relationship with them. So it's another aspect.
Do you think, because you mentioned, like we just said, you see it as a separate business unit, but that was now regarding language training. Would you say that like all types of diversification should rather be seen as separate business units, or can they be more integrated?
Me?
All of you.
Not all of them, maybe.
No. Ilya, you go. Or
if it's a vertical, I mean, the main value of a translation company is the project management, basically. We get all the bits and pieces together, and we deliver the product through that bits and pieces, moving around and creating something tangible, right? So if it's a different vertical, you don't have to be a life sciences project manager to be able to manage that project. You learn by mistakes, you learn by experience, you learn through people providing you this training, but still it's something like, in terms of something that's technically a bit different, like language training, yes, in Russia it makes sense also from a legal standpoint because of all the licensing and other stuff. But I wouldn't say that if we go into, maybe if it's something that you haven't done from the technology standpoint, like game localization, I would think that we'd do a separate unit, but not in that far detached sense as we do with the language training. It still would be the same, within the same production, within the same sales paradigm. Might be like a group of people, like project managers completely bought out from another company, or salespeople that worked in the industry, but still would be within the same general structure.
Okay.
Yeah, well, last year I was considering opening a separate business unit for post-editing for transcreation, because I'm kind of well known for post-editing in Italy, And I was starting to think that I would be perceived just focused on that, and that I was not able to sell task creation because it's on the different sides. So one is creative, one is very not non-creative thing. So I was considering opening a different unit for that, but I was not. I decided not to do that. I guess it's a question of communication in my case. So it's two different services at the opposite, but it doesn't deserve a different business unit, I guess, in my case.
Mhm.
So I have a question for Constantine. So like we're hearing the strategies that different people have with their diversification, and I was wondering if you could talk about like the opportunity cost of diversification. Like so basically like if you are what things are you missing out on if you're diversifying?
If you're diversifying,
Yeah.
it depends. I mean, it depends on the type of diversification. Let me give you something else. So let's say you're doing one service. What else can you do? There's a world of opportunities all around you. Some of them, they fall into your lap, just through website or acquaintances and network. It might be good, it might be not good. Then there's the trend in the market. So for example, right now, AI is emerging and there's a lot of demand for different services to train machines like Diego is doing. So which ones should you take? Which ones you should invest money in? You hear on the news maybe audiovisual translations are going really good, subtitling, dubbing like Andre does. You cannot do everything, right? So how do you choose? I give like two quick shortcuts. One type of new service is something strategic for your client, something which sets their eyes open and their mind on fire. So I call it a lure, a fish hook. So something like with which you can get new customers. So that's your vertical where you're already working. Something which comes before translation, before they even realize the translation. For example, I think WordBee is very big on video game localization automation, right? Yeah. So the companies that work video games, they localize them. So when you localize video game, it's available to more people who do not speak the language, so you can take a localized version. Thus, the audience for the video game, potential number of people who want to buy it, increases. But then, let's say your video game comes out on Apple, on iOS, and you can increase the audience by porting this game from Apple to Android, right? So you have some engineers, they take the existing art for the game, the sound and everything, they just port it to another operation system. And voila, you have double potential audience for the game. So the video game localization companies, what they do is they add porting. It comes before localization, and it's a similar kind of service. Extend your audience. Fishhook is not necessarily porting because porting requires a lot of work, but maybe some cultural adaptation, something which makes the game more accepted in another country, so that it sells better. Multilingual advertising, multilingual digital campaigns that could serve the purpose of bringing the customer in. Now, the second type of new service is a cash cow. When you start with some technology-based service, something you don't know well, it's very likely that you won't make a big profit out of it. Right? So maybe you don't know how to optimize. Maybe the technology is killing the human effort. For a company in professional services, the money, the profit is always in very optimized and scaled up human labor, so that many humans work, and on each of the humans there's a margin. So this kind of service, it's more difficult to add and it takes years to optimize. But if you can build it into a service line, that could extend your profits by far a big amount. So when deciding what to do, which service to adopt, it's much easier to find a pitchfork with this kind of small service strategic, maybe through a partnership with another company. Maybe if you're translating technical documentation, you can partner up with technical writing company or technology management company, whatever. So that helps you provide more for your current customers, your current vertical customers. But then if you want to completely go to another business, think where there's scalable human effort and something that you can optimize over the years to maximize your profit. A cash cow.
Cool. Has anyone else tried this partnership strategy where like you're partnering up with other companies that offer auxiliary services?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Sure.
of course. Especially in audiovisual, you know, we do audiovisual translation, and if you do want to do it right, then you have to embed yourself very, very deep into the workflows of video production companies that produce the content, because if you don't, then nothing will fit together, and you're gonna have triple the effort. So that's very, very close partnerships are very, very important, and just for you know, certain projects, you're not gonna, you know, hire, you know, a highly trained, you know, motion graphic designer or something, you know, or 3D artist for Maya or something, you know. Of course, you're dependent on these, and this is part of the network that you're building. And I'm sure, especially Diego, I'm sure you know all about it, right? I mean, if you do all these things that you said that you do, then you always have adjacent services that you need to buy somewhere.
Yeah, what my luck has been to have access to many people because I train at the university. So I would call many of my projects crowdsourcing or projects where many people are needed, and I'm able to have access to many resources and to offer many services because of that. So I have access to many people. So that's my luck. It's more having partnerships with the schools and universities rather than with other companies. But I do have partnerships with other companies as well, and professionals, yes. It's not everything in house. We are pretty small actually, so it's more
I mean,
partnerships.
it depends. I mean, it's like certain projects, you know, have to be so nice and so high gloss that yeah, of course you need companies to do, you know, because it depends on the project. You have to have a big network. That's the
That's
thing.
important, yeah.
Yeah.
Ilya mentioned at the beginning that there were quite some difficulties and it was difficult getting into difficult to diversify. Can we talk about those entry barriers?
Sure. Well,
Up here.
the money.
Your head.
You need the money for some things, and well, your head.
Yeah, of course.
Depends. Well, like you calculate the investment, the ROI, and then you see you look at other companies, you see them doing this, and then you're thinking that, hey, that's a really good idea. But then you dig deeper, and then you realize that because we abandoned the idea of regulatory affairs, the medicinal registration after we calculated the entry cost, which was not that we can afford this year, next year, or maybe 2 years from now, and it. You know, and this is not something that we would get external investment from just by presenting a business plan. So we try different things, including technology, including the regulatory affairs, and then ended up with the thing that we know that is relatively easy to build, and that has, at least we have the marketing framework, we have the sales framework that can support it, because with like registration business, it's a completely different sets of people that we need to hire. We need to know how to hire, and what the qualification to look for. So it's, in our case, that's the investment. And there.
So I would say it's more a question of finding the right talents, and you need money for that, of course. We are a small company, so many things to offer new services. I need to actually study a lot, so it's a question of time for me as well. So because for many services I cannot risk and hire someone from scratch at the beginning, so I need to study a lot, to invest a lot of time. It's a question of knowing how to price the service, where you can find your space in the market for that particular service. So it's time and talent, I would say. And you need money for both. So.
And then
Yeah,
maybe the network as well, like the network of the easy example. We had a wider network of people from the academia because we work with universities a lot in order to be able to start the language training, right? So we actually knew how to build it because we knew people that consulted us, that advised us, that were ready to help or do some work for us for money. But still, in terms of registration, we had to look specifically, and we didn't know anybody there. So we bit by bit, we spent a lot of time finding the right people, then asking them the right question, and then doing the financial calculation, which in the end turned out to be like we spent half a year on this. And then, you know, it's, well, not time lost, but so you have to have that work in order to be able to actually get the right advice as well.
That's the thing. Don't, to me, it's like, don't get, I mean, I was lucky that, you know, I worked as a freelancer doing all sorts of stuff for ages. So, you know, you looked into very many different fields and such. And that's why I would still say, you know, it's like, if you have to make money with something straight away, be careful not to venture off too far from your comfort zone. Because it's, when you say it's time, money, and people, well, it's maybe not a lot of money if you know what you're doing, and if you have absolutely no clue, then it's probably going to cost you a lot more money. And it's just it's a mix of experience, knowing the right people, knowing what you need for what, and we also never start anything like that. I mean, not never. That's not true. But we want to have a specific project, and then we go for it. Right? I mean, this is so I know I have X amount of money coming in, and I can spend Y. Hopefully, it works out. So yeah, that's my advice. You know, it's like I worked in audio post-production for 10 years on films and advertising and everything. So I know exactly what I'm doing if I'm doing audio visual translation. If you have no clue what you're doing, do it as a hobby for many years, and then start touching it, because there's so much to it. But everybody, each one of us has things that they enjoy doing. Think about, like, is there something that you can combine with what you already know? And that's mostly a good start.
So fake it until you make it. Oh, sorry, Constantine, you go.
I just wanted to say that if it's something adjacent, then probably people in your team can do it. If it's a little further, then you need to start a partnership, or maybe you can acquire a company that does that. Everyone's company now. I mean, you can have two people company getting acquired if it's in Europe or in the United States. If they do something interesting, if they're good, there's the equity hire option where you buy the company so that you can get the people.
But you know, M&A growth creates a whole bunch of other problems. So, you know, there's that. You know, you might get the skill, but you know, you go to here's a huge package of, here's a lot of people that do their thing, and you have to train them how you do your thing. And but you're right, if it's a complicated skill, then M&A is a thing to consider.
I also think there's a lot of customers that are willing to train you and help you grow with the services, with what they need. We've been doing content enrichment for TV programs, which is something really strange and weird for us. But they trained us for a whole week here in our office, and we do that a lot now for many languages. Same for data cleaning or whatever, data collection.
What is content enrichment, if I may ask?
We are given, let's say, for instance, one of the projects was to train a text-to-speech, a speech-to-text, and vice versa system. So we were given, say, a sentence which you would use to set up your alarm in your mobile. And we need to create similar sentences to imagine what users would ask their mobile to set up the alarm. Or we are given a movie title and we need to create a synopsis to make it longer or shorter, depending on where it will be published. So that's what they told us is content enrichment, at least. So it's basically content creation with some hints at the beginning.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that there is a specific time in a business where diversification makes sense, or is it not really related to the life cycle of a business?
I think probably the answer would be that you need to find your focus first. This would be the theory, at least, but for me, it was just I did diversify from the very beginning because I was forced to. So it's probably a mindset that you have. So there's no timeline for me.
When you see a current opportunity or when you see a new bigger one?
Yeah, there's the opportunity, right? Yeah. If there's opportunity, there is you know, that's all what it comes down to. Of course, sometimes sometimes you create an opportunity because you have an idea. You come up with an idea and then you create an opportunity. But most of the time, it's just like somebody asks for something and then you make it happen. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it can even be from day one, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
But sometimes you come up with an idea, come up with a product. You see a gap in the market side. This is gonna sell. If we do this is gonna sell. And then you look like, oh, what do we need? And if there's one or two things missing, then you close the gap and then you do it. But it's always sort of an opportunity. Doesn't matter if it's a gap in the market or somebody asking for something.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like, oh geez. I would like Constantine to play devil's advocate. Is what I would like. But I don't know, like I of course like all of this makes sense, but I'm sort of asking myself, like, it kind of what Ilya was saying earlier about the sales team and having to have like two different sales teams. I'm just wondering if by diversifying, is your sales team, while it might seem like you're earning more money and growing faster, is it possible that you're actually losing traction and selling slower than you would have if you had just focused on, one
There's
or
another
two?
company, Ilya knows it. So they used to be like super cool in the segment that we focused on. They were one of the first companies that did projects, long-term projects with technology and terminology and everything. So they've grown, and then they looked around and realized that they've hit the ceiling in the segment and they need to look around. And there was game localization blossoming, medical stuff springing up, audiovisual. So every time when they noticed a potentially interesting segment, they selected a person on the team, usually not someone from the core team, but someone young, bright, not very expensive. And I said, go out there and give them help, make it happen. So they would give them a limited budget to develop that segment. And in the long run, what happened is that some of these initiatives they got traction, but it was a very limited traction because they didn't commit to diversification. And they tried to win a sector with very limited resources. So in the end, on these new sectors that they aimed for, they only got maybe like 2, 3, maybe 5% of their revenue from the vertical max, and the whole company's growth kind of hit the wall because they couldn't penetrate any of the segments deep enough to be the leader in that segment, to be someone on everyone's mind. You know, like marketing. You create a ranking in your client head where you're number one. Even if it's a very, very small niche, like making webinars for technology companies in the language industry, you have to be number one to create that niche. So unless you commit, unless you you have the resources and the people and talent and the endurance to go all the way, you wouldn't penetrate a new segment. It might be this kind of decorative. Is that good enough for playing the devil's advocate?
It's good enough.
The sales people. The salespeople can't. The thing is, anyway, you know, this whole thing is so specialized that, you know, you have a hard time finding salespeople that if they're proper salespeople and don't come from within the company and have been project managers before, they can't know all the ins and outs anyway. This is why we very quickly after the initial lead phase, the salespeople pass on to the heads of the department anyway, because I don't, you know, it's nice if the client notices straight away that the person that they're talking to knows what they're doing. If you diversify you have to change your sales strategy a little bit. You can't like have salespeople that know all the products and all the ins and outs. You have to pass on very, very quickly in order not to look like a fool.
Well, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. You were nodding, so it's like that's what we do. Like, you know, get the foot in the door and then.
Sorry, Andre.
Okay, guys. Well, we're running out of time here, so I think we're wrapping this up. Let me just quickly check to make sure we. So there's one question. It says, which type of diversification makes sense for what type of business? Are there like specific types of diversification that make more sense for specific businesses, or like what they offer already or not? I guess it probably leads back to what you were saying before, right? That it's all about
the opportunity.
The opportunity. Yeah.
I know a translation company that makes, well, the core business, I think it used to be a core business. I'm not sure that they changed a bit this year. Is that they make these, what do you call it? The playgrounds, you know, the kids' playgrounds in the, like in the housing projects where we get in, we get slides and everything. They make those. They make way more money out of this than out of translation, but they also do translation, win large contracts. So it's.
Seriously?
Oh, they also do. Our partner is what they use. They sell cement and rolling stock, like by a lot. Like the turnover is in billions, well, in rubles, but billions. And they also sell translations. So when they come in, they say, okay, our turnover is billions of rubles, but we have a translation side of it. But what do we do? Yes, we sell cement. So.
Well, I guess it's a general question of business that you.
Wow.
Diversify, you decrease your risks. I have a co-working space also, but that's
good on you.
You know, I guess like before we hang up here, I could just mention that, like, we don't normally talk about WordBee, but WordBee is also, you know, has diversification things going on as well, right? So it's like it's a product And like Constantine mentioned, like we are pretty big in games log right now. Like, so a lot of games companies use WordBee, but then, you know, there's also life sciences companies that use WordBee. There's just like LSPs of all different varieties that use WordBee. And I think that our challenge is like that. So we are in these different markets. And not only are we in these different markets, but the product is a little bit different than a service, right? Because you're actually developing product features to serve different markets, and those features end up being available in the system for the people in the other markets as well. So you end up with a pretty powerful system, I guess. But I think for us the challenge has just been like we wanted to focus on, I think last year we chose 4 sectors, but it turned out to be very difficult to focus on 4 sectors for us because, well, first of all, from a marketing standpoint, we couldn't limit the sectors that we list on our website because it's kind of like, I would liken it to things that Diego was saying, right? Where it's like, okay, people are coming to your website, you're not going to turn down business, right? So we made the decision not to limit ourselves with our marketing on the website, right? And then from there, like we wanted to focus on those sectors with our sales and stuff, but then we get requests of all kinds from all different industries. And you go to conferences and it's just it's impossible to know who you are going to talk to. And you know, as much as I think that for us it would have been nice to really go deep into these particular sectors, so far it hasn't necessarily worked out. Like it's worked out for us in games because I guess because we've kind of become the #1 in games. But in the other sectors, maybe not. What's that?
Not yet.
That was reasonable doubt, but please go on.
No, what did I say? Did I say something that wasn't true?
Keep going.
Yeah. Maybe I have inside information, Constantine. But
Getting there.
yeah. Anyways, it was a struggle for us, I think, from a sales and marketing point of view, to try to limit it to specific sectors when we get requests of all kinds from all over, and you know, we're not very well going to turn away business.
Why
so
would
that,
a system that is made to exchange, to swap strings, be limited to a certain topic? That's something I never really quite understood. You know, it's like it doesn't. You know, a cat tool doesn't care what you translate with it.
right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of overlap in terms of the functionality of the tool. But then in your sales and marketing activities, you can get pretty diffuse, right? So like even though your tool is perfect for all of these different sectors, sales is a lot of work. And
yeah, but it might give, you know, if you advertise for life sciences, then it might give people the appearance that, oh, we do automotive, so we can't use this product. You know, which is not true.
yeah, that's why you have to advertise for automotive too, I guess. It's an interesting thing.
I think that's a whole another discussion in itself. Like,
it's very similar to the one we had, but when you're talking about products, it can be kind of different than services.
Yeah, and the whole thing about is it better to be an expert in just one field and position yourself as an expert, or like you said, not, you know, decline opportunities. But anyways, I think we are probably ready to wrap this up. We don't want to keep you any longer. It's been great having you all, and thank you so much to our listeners as well. Like we said, this has been recorded and it's going to be sent to everyone. And yeah, this has been great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great talking to you guys.
Bye-bye.